Captain James Walker stood straight and tall in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, his polished boots reflecting the purple light from the massive crystal chandeliers above. Next to him, his German shepherd Max sat perfectly still, dark eyes alert and watchful. The dog's presence had caused quite a stir among the alien representatives, but Walker had refused to leave his partner behind. High Counselor Rex, a tall being with silvery skin and 4 arms, looked down from his floating platform with barely concealed disgust. "You mean to tell us," he said, his translator making his voice sound like grinding metal, "that your species still relies on primitive biological companions for military operations?" Laughter echoed through the chamber. The other council members, some floating in anti-gravity fields, others perched on environmental pods, joined in the mockery. A reptilian delegate flicked his tongue in amusement, while a gaseous being pulsed with different colors to show its entertainment. Walker kept his face neutral, though his hand instinctively moved to rest on Max's head. The dog didn't move, didn't react to the laughter. They had faced worse than mockery before. "With all due respect, High Counselor," Walker replied, his voice clear and firm, "Earth's human canine combat units have proven highly effective in our planetary defense operations." A holographic display sprang to life in the center of the chamber, showing footage from Earth's military archives. The council members watched as soldiers and their dogs moved through various terrains: dense jungles, frozen wastelands, scorching deserts. "Primitive," shouted one of the council members, their crystalline forms sparkling with derision. "Look at them, crawling through dirt when they could use hover technology. Our latest combat drones can process billions of tactical decisions per second." Another added, their tentacles waving dismissively. "What can these pets offer that technology cannot?" Walker stepped forward, maintaining his composure. "Dogs are products of Earth's evolutionary crucible. Like humans, they emerged from one of the galaxy's most challenging deathworlds. They possess something no drone can replicate: genuine adaptation and instinct." High Counselor Rex raised one of his 4 hands, silencing the chamber. "Captain Walker, the Galactic Council appreciates Earth's application to join our military alliance. However, we maintain certain standards. Our combined forces utilize the most advanced technology in known space. We cannot compromise our effectiveness by incorporating." He paused, looking at Max with disdain. "Outdated biological solutions." As if on cue, Max's ears suddenly perked up. The dog's head turned sharply toward the chamber's main entrance, muscles tensing beneath his fur. Walker recognized the change in his partner's demeanor immediately. Seconds later, alarms blared throughout the chamber. The massive doors slid open, and security forces rushed in, their energy weapons powered up. "High Counselor," one of them shouted, "we've detected a breach in the lower levels. Something got through our sensor grid." Rex rose from his platform, all 4 hands moving to activate various control panels. "Impossible. Our security systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. Nothing can." A crash interrupted him as something burst through the ornate floor. A creature of shadows and claws, somehow cloaked from the Council's vaunted detection systems, launched itself toward the High Counselor. But Max was already moving. The German shepherd crossed the chamber in a blur of black and tan, intercepting the assassin in mid-leap. Walker drew his sidearm and fired in the same instant, years of training with his canine partner showing in their perfect coordination. The would-be assassin lay neutralized on the floor, while Max stood guard over it, hackles raised but maintaining perfect discipline. Silence fell over the chamber. High Counselor Rex stared at the scene before him, all 4 arms frozen in mid-motion. The other council members watched in shocked silence as human and dog worked seamlessly to secure the threat, demonstrating a level of efficient cooperation that none of their advanced systems had matched. Walker allowed himself a small smile as he secured the assassin. Sometimes the best response to mockery wasn't words, but action. And this was just the beginning of what humans and their canine partners could do. The Galactic Council was about to learn some very interesting lessons about primitive solutions. 2 weeks after the assassination attempt, The Galactic Council faced a threat far worse than any they had imagined. The emergency alarms in the Grand Chamber flashed deep red as holographic displays showed the fall of yet another colony world. 3 more defense fleets have gone dark, reported Admiral Tom of the Council forces, his scaled face showing rare signs of fear. The swarm is adapting to our countermeasures faster than we can deploy them. High Counselor Rex watched in horror as the tactical display showed thousands of black dots swarming across star systems. Each dot represented a swarm ship, and their numbers were overwhelming. Behind him, Captain Walker and Max observed silently, having been asked to stay on as security consultants after preventing the assassination. How? Rex slammed all 4 hands onto his control panel. How are they bypassing our most advanced systems? The answer came as they watched a live feed from the front lines. The Council's prized combat drones, each worth more than a small city, simply stopped in mid-flight. The swarm's electronic warfare turned the advanced machines into floating scrap. Then came the acid weapons, organic compounds that ate through the Council's best armor like paper. Colony World Bright Hope has fallen. A mechanical voice announced. Colony World Star's Rest has fallen. Colony World New Beginning has fallen. Walker stepped forward, Max at his side. High Counselor, the swarm is using biological weapons against technological defenses. They've found the weakness in your approach. Rex turned all 4 eyes toward the human captain. And what would you suggest? More of your primitive solutions. Despite his sarcastic tone, there was a hint of desperation in his voice. Before Walker could answer, another emergency transmission cut through the chamber. The holographic display showed a Council General, his environmental suit damaged and sparking. High Council, the General's voice crackled. They've developed some kind of organic acid fog. Our sensors can't penetrate it. The drones are useless. They fly in and never come out. We're fighting blind, and the transmission cut off as acid fog rolled over the camera. Max suddenly stood up, his nose working the air. Even here, in the Council chamber several star systems away from the fighting, the dog had caught something. Walker had learned to trust those instincts. Sir, Walker addressed Rex, the swarm isn't just using biological weapons. They are biological weapons. They've evolved to counter your technology because that's what biological organisms do. They adapt. Rex watched as another defensive line collapsed on the tactical display. And you believe your human canine combat units could do better against this threat? Walker pointed to Max, who was still alertly scanning the room. Dogs evolved on Earth alongside humans, surviving everything our Deathworld could throw at them. Their senses aren't just programmed. They're alive, able to adapt in real time. No acid fog can fool a dog's nose. No electronic warfare can shut down their instincts. The chamber fell silent as another emergency signal flashed. The swarm had just breached the defenses of a world only 3 systems away from the Council capital. High Counselor Rex looked at the tactical display, then at Max, then at the reports of failing drones and useless sensors. For the first time in Council history, their superior technology wasn't enough. Captain Walker, Rex said finally, his voice heavy with the weight of his decision. How quickly can Earth deploy these human canine combat units? Walker straightened, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Sir, we've had our forces on standby since the day we applied to join the Alliance. We're ready to deploy immediately. Max stood at attention, as if understanding the gravity of the moment. The dog's powerful muscles were tense, ready for action. Around the chamber, the Council members who had laughed at the primitive beast just weeks ago now looked at him with desperate hope. The time had come to show the galaxy what Earth's children, both human and canine, could really do. The great chamber of the Galactic Council had changed dramatically in the past week. Gone were the floating platforms and ornate decorations. Instead, emergency command stations filled the space, with tired officers from a dozen species monitoring the swarm's advance. Captain Walker strode into the center of this organized chaos, Max trotting beside him. In his hands, he carried a simple metal case. High Counselor Rex looked down from his command station, all four eyes showing signs of exhaustion. "You have a proposal for us, Captain?" Rex asked, his usual arrogance replaced by weary hope. Walker placed the case on a nearby table and opened it. Inside lay several items that seemed absurdly simple to the advanced aliens: a leather harness, a reinforced vest, and what appeared to be primitive communication devices. "This is the basic equipment for one human canine combat unit," Walker explained. He lifted the vest, which was made of a tough material the color of sand. "This is made from materials developed on Earth to withstand extreme conditions, like the dogs themselves. It's the product of a Deathworld's necessity." Max sat perfectly still as Walker demonstrated by fitting the vest onto him. The dog looked ready for battle, his alert eyes scanning the room continuously. "Primitive protective gear," one of the council members scoffed, though with less conviction than before. "How will this help against the swarm's acid weapons?" Walker smiled. "The vest isn't just protection. It's part of a complete system we call the HCCU, Human Canine Combat Unit." He pointed to different parts of the equipment. "These sensors work with the dog's natural abilities, not instead of them. While your drones go blind in acid fog, our dogs can still smell, hear, and sense vibrations. The gear simply helps us understand what they already know." He pulled up a holographic display showing footage from Earth's military archives. The council members watched as dogs and handlers moved through conditions that had proven fatal to their forces: thick fog, electronic warfare zones, and areas of intense acid saturation. "Our dogs don't just detect threats," Walker continued. "They adapt to new ones. When the swarm changes tactics, our dogs learn. They process information through instinct and experience, not programming. You can't hack instinct." Max suddenly turned his head toward one of the chamber's air vents, ears forward. Walker immediately pulled out a small device from the case and checked it. "See, Max just detected a change in the air current pattern. If there was a threat, he'd know before any electronic sensor." High Counselor Rex leaned forward, studying Max with new interest. "How many of these units can Earth deploy?" "We have 5,000 HCCU teams ready for immediate deployment," Walker answered. "Each handler and dog have trained together for years. They eat together, sleep in the same quarters, fight as one. The bond between them is something the swarm can't understand or counter." He reached down and scratched behind Max's ears, a gesture that made several council members shift uncomfortably. They still didn't understand the deep connection between humans and their canine partners. "The swarm thinks like a hive," Walker explained. "They can't comprehend individual bonds or loyalty. That's why they only use biological weapons as tools. But our dogs aren't tools. They're partners. Family." Rex stood up, using all four arms to manipulate the tactical displays around him. "Show me," he commanded. "Show me how these units would deploy against a swarm attack." Walker pulled out a tactical pad and began laying out deployment plans. As he spoke, other council members drew closer, their earlier disdain forgotten in the face of desperate need. Even the most skeptical among them had to admit that their advanced technology had failed. Perhaps it was time to try something that the swarm wouldn't expect. Something born from Earth's harsh evolution. Max remained alert at Walker's side, ready to show the galaxy why humans had chosen dogs as their partners so many thousands of years ago. The age of proving their worth was about to begin. The massive hangar of the Council's main battleship had been transformed into a training ground for Earth's finest. 500 human canine combat units moved through various exercise zones, preparing for their first deployment against the swarm. Captain Walker walked between the training areas with High Counselor Rex, who watched with a mixture of doubt and fascination. Max padded alongside them, already wearing his combat vest. There, Walker pointed to a section where handlers and their Belgian Malinois were practicing rapid deployment drills. "Those dogs are our fastest units. They can cross broken ground faster than your hoverbikes and maintain perfect balance even in zero gravity. They watched as one of the Malinois leaped through a series of anti-gravity fields, its handler following with perfectly timed commands. The dog moved like a missile, precise and deadly. And here, Walker gestured to another area where massive Rottweilers worked with their handlers in a simulated acid fog zone, our heavy assault units. Those dogs can carry emergency gear and still fight effectively. Their thick fur and natural strength make them perfect for rescue operations. Rex watched as a Rottweiler easily pulled a wounded dummy twice its size to safety, its protective gear gleaming under the hangar lights. Impressive, he admitted, but can they handle the psychological pressure of real combat? Walker smiled and led them to the next section. Here, Dutch shepherds were working in a specially designed chaos chamber. Lights flashed, sirens blared, and holographic swarm creatures appeared randomly. The dogs remained focused, working with their handlers to neutralize threats without hesitation. Dogs don't feel fear the way we do, Walker explained. They live in the moment, trust their instincts, and above all, trust their handlers. That bond is stronger than any programming. A group of Council military observers stood nearby, taking notes as German shepherds demonstrated their tracking abilities. One dog had just found a tiny piece of swarm technology hidden in a massive maze of cargo containers. The swarm's acid weapons can't fool their noses, Walker said proudly. And watch this. He nodded to a trainer who activated a powerful electronic warfare device. All the nearby screens went dark, and communication systems crackled with static. The dogs continued their work without missing a beat. You see, no electronics to hack, no programming to corrupt, just pure instinct and training. Rex walked closer to one of the training areas, where a handler was showing how the dog's protective gear worked. The vest wasn't just armor. It contained cooling systems for hot environments, warming for cold ones, and special filters for toxic atmospheres. Each dog and handler trained together for 2 years before they're certified for combat. Walker continued. They learn to read each other's smallest signals. In battle, they'll barely need to speak. As if to demonstrate, Max suddenly tensed beside Walker. Without a word being said, Walker smoothly drew his weapon and turned. A training drone had malfunctioned and was flying erratically toward them. Before Rex could even raise an alarm, Max had already positioned himself between the drone and the officials, while Walker used his body as a shield for his dog. The drone was quickly deactivated, but the point had been made. The bond between handler and dog wasn't just training, it was instinct, trust, and absolute loyalty. Tomorrow, Walker said, watching his fellow handlers work with their partners, we deploy to defend Colony World Hope's light. The swarm thinks they found the perfect way to defeat advanced technology. They're about to learn that Earth's warriors don't rely on technology alone. Around them, hundreds of dogs and their handlers continued their preparations. Each pair moved like one being, their movements smoothly coordinated through thousands of hours of training. The Council's mighty battleship had never seen warriors quite like these. The swarm was about to discover why dogs had been humanity's most trusted allies for thousands of years. The dawn sky of Colony World Hope's light turned green as the swarm's acid fog rolled across the capital city. Council combat drones fell from the air like dead insects, their systems overwhelmed by the enemy's electronic warfare. Captain Walker stood at the forward command post, watching through special goggles as the fog approached. Behind him, 500 human canine combat units waited in perfect formation. The dogs were silent, focused, their combat vests gleaming in the strange light. All Council forces have gone dark, reported a nervous alien technician. Our sensors are blind. The swarm could be anywhere in that fog. Walker smiled slightly and looked down at Max. The German shepherd's ears were already forward, nose working the air. They're not anywhere, Walker said. Max says they're exactly 300 meters ahead, moving in a crescent formation. High Counselor Rex, who had come to witness the deployment personally, looked skeptical. How could he possibly? Before he could finish, The shapes of swarm warriors emerged from the fog exactly where Max had indicated. They looked like giant insects, their chitinous armor gleaming with toxic chemicals. HCCU teams, deploy, Walker commanded. What happened next stunned the watching council forces. The dogs and their handlers moved into the fog without hesitation. Where council forces had been blind, the dogs navigated perfectly, guided by scent and sound. The handlers followed their partner's lead, completely trusting their dogs' instincts. Max and Walker took point, leading their section through the acid fog. The dog's enhanced vest sensors transmitted data to Walker's goggles, showing him exactly what Max could smell and hear. When a swarm warrior lunged from hiding, Max was already moving to intercept. 9 o'clock, shouted a handler somewhere in the fog. Her Belgian Malinois launched through the air, taking down a swarm attacker that had been trying to flank them. The dog's specially designed vest protected it from the acid splash, while its natural speed and agility proved more than a match for the alien warrior. In another sector, a team of Rottweilers and their handlers formed a defensive line around trapped civilian evacuees. The massive dogs stood their ground against charging swarm warriors, their powerful jaws easily crushing the aliens' armor. Their handlers provided covering fire, the years of training showing in their perfect coordination. The council observers watched in amazement as their tactical displays came back to life, now fed by data from the HCCU teams. Where their advanced technology had failed, the combined senses of dogs and humans were mapping the entire battlefield. They're not just fighting, Rex realized, watching the display. They're adapting. Look, he was right. As the swarm tried new tactics, the dogs adjusted instantly. When the aliens attempted to use high-pitched sonic weapons, the dogs' protective gear automatically adjusted to protect their sensitive ears. When the swarm released new types of acid fog, the dogs' keen noses quickly learned to identify and avoid the most dangerous concentrations. Walker and Max led a charge that broke through the swarm's main line. The German Shepherd moved like a shadow through the fog, his every motion perfectly synchronized with his handler's movements. Other teams followed their lead, pushing the swarm back step by step. "The enemy is retreating," announced the command post. "They're falling back to their ships." As the acid fog began to clear, the extent of the HCCU team's victory became clear. Not a single dog or handler had been lost, while the swarm had been forced to abandon their attack entirely. High Counselor Rex stared at the battlefield, then at Max, who had returned to Walker's side looking barely winded. The dog's vest was covered in acid burns and alien blood, but his alert eyes were already scanning for any remaining threats. "Perhaps," Rex said slowly, "we were wrong about primitive solutions." Walker knelt beside his partner, checking him for injuries. "No, sir," he replied with a smile. "You were wrong about what makes a solution primitive. Sometimes the oldest bonds are the strongest." Around them, dogs and handlers regrouped, ready for the next battle. The swarm had just learned a crucial lesson. Never underestimate the defenders of a Deathworld, especially when they come in pairs. Alarms blared throughout the Galactic Council's capital world, as thousands of swarm ships darkened the sky. This was their biggest attack yet, a desperate attempt to destroy the heart of the Council's civilization. In the main defense command center, Captain Walker studied the tactical displays as Max paced restlessly beside him. Around them, 500 HCCU teams prepared for battle, their dogs already wearing their combat gear. "They're hitting us with everything they have," High Counselor Rex announced, his 4 arms working multiple control panels. "Our orbital defenses are already down. Ground-based weapons are failing. This is it." Walker nodded grimly. "Then we'll hit back with everything we have." He turned to address the assembled HCCU teams. "Handlers, dogs, this is what we trained for. The swarm thinks they can overwhelm us with numbers. Let's show them what Earth's finest can really do." The first wave of swarm warriors dropped from their ships like deadly rain. As they landed, they released clouds of new, more potent acid fog. The few remaining Council defense drones sparked and fell from the sky. All teams, deploy. Walker commanded. Pattern Alpha 7. Protect the evacuation centers at all costs. The HCCU teams moved out in perfect formation. Belgian Malinois teams took the front lines, their incredible speed allowing them to strike and fade back before the swarm could respond. The dogs' enhanced vests transmitted constant tactical data, creating a real-time map of enemy positions. In the city center, Rottweiler teams formed living barriers around civilian shelters. Their powerful builds and protective gear let them hold the line against waves of swarm attackers. The aliens' acid weapons splashed harmlessly off the dogs' specially designed armor. Dutch Shepherd teams patrolled the spaces between defensive positions, their keen senses detecting and eliminating swarm infiltrators. When the aliens tried to burrow under defenses, the dogs heard them coming through meters of soil. Walker and Max led from the front, coordinating the defense. The German Shepherd suddenly stopped, hackles rising. Through their neural link, Walker saw what Max had detected, a massive swarm creature, bigger than any they'd encountered before. "Swarm Queen," someone shouted. They'd brought their leader. The Queen burst from the acid fog, her massive form towering over the defenders. Council forces fell back in terror, but the HCCU teams held their ground. The dogs' barking echoed through the streets, a sound that struck fear into the alien warriors. Then disaster struck. High Counselor Rex's command platform, trying to get a better view of the battle, moved too close to the front lines. The Queen spotted him and launched a spray of super-concentrated acid that ate through his protective shields instantly. Max was moving before Walker could give the command. The dog launched himself through the air as Rex fell, catching the council leader's robe in his teeth. With incredible strength, Max pulled Rex to safety behind a barrier, just as the Queen's second acid spray melted the spot where he had been. Walker rushed forward, his weapon firing precision shots at the Queen's sensitive spots, weak points that Max's enhanced sensors had identified. Other HCCU teams converged on their position, dogs and handlers moving like one fighting force. The Queen, faced with an enemy she couldn't intimidate or override with technology, began to retreat. Her warriors, seeing their leader fall back, lost their coordination. Without the Queen's direct control, the swarm's famous hive mind began to break down. "Push them back," Walker shouted. "All teams advance." The dog's barking became a war cry as the HCCU teams surged forward. The swarm, for the first time in their history, experienced fear. These Earth creatures, both human and canine, fought with a unity that was different from their hive mind. It was a unity born of trust, loyalty, and choice. High Counselor Rex, helped to his feet by Max, watched in awe as the combined might of dogs and handlers drove the swarm from his world. The mighty council capital had been saved not by advanced technology, but by the unbreakable bond between humans and their oldest allies. 1 month after the great battle for the council capital, the Grand Chamber looked very different from the day when Captain Walker had first stood there with Max. Gone were the sneers and mockery. Instead, 500 human canine combat unit teams stood in formation, their dogs alert and proud beside them. High Counselor Rex, his formal robes still showing signs of repair from the acid damage, stood at the center of the chamber. His 4 arms were raised for silence as he addressed the gathered representatives from across the galaxy. 3 months ago, Rex began, his translator carrying his voice to every corner. "I stood in this chamber and dismissed Earth's military forces as primitive. I mocked their reliance on biological companions." He paused, looking down at Max, who sat perfectly positioned next to Walker. "I have never been more wrong." The chamber erupted in agreement. The same council members who had laughed at the dogs now watched them with respect and even a touch of fear. They had all seen the battle footage, dogs and handlers working as one to drive back the greatest threat the council had ever faced. "The swarm has retreated beyond the galaxy's edge," Rex continued. "Their queen, humbled by Earth's defenders, has signed a peace treaty. For the first time in their history, the swarm knows fear. the fear of Earth's warriors, both human and canine. Walker stood at attention as Rex approached him and Max. The High Counselor carried two objects in his lower hands, a golden medallion and what appeared to be a studded collar made of shimmering metal. "Captain James Walker," Rex announced formally, "the Council hereby promotes you to commander of the newly formed Galactic Defense Forces Human Canine Division. Your teams will train forces across the galaxy, teaching them the value of biological adaptation over blind reliance on technology." He placed the medallion around Walker's neck, then turned to Max. The German Shepherd sat perfectly still as Rex held up the special collar. "And to Max, first of the war dogs of Earth to enter Council space, we grant the title of First Dog of the Galaxy. This collar, crafted from metals found only in the heart of stars, marks him as a hero of the Council, equal to any sentient being in our space." As Rex fastened the collar around Max's neck, the dog maintained perfect discipline, though his tail wagged slightly. Walker smiled, knowing his partner understood the honor being given. Furthermore, Rex continued, addressing all the HCCU teams, "Every dog who fought in defense of Council space will receive similar recognition. Their breeds will be recorded in our archives as warrior races of Earth, and their descendants will always have a place among the stars." The chamber filled with the sound of barking as the dogs, perhaps sensing the joy of their handlers, joined in the celebration. The Council members, who once would have found such noise primitive, now smiled at the sound of their saviors' voices. "We have learned," Rex said finally, "that true strength lies not in technological advancement alone, but in the bonds we forge. Humanity's greatest achievement was not in building machines, but in earning the loyalty and love of another species. The dogs of Earth chose to fight alongside them, and in doing so, they have saved us all." Walker looked down at Max, remembering their first day in this chamber. His partner looked back up at him, brown eyes full of intelligence and dedication. They had proved to the galaxy that the oldest bonds were often the strongest, that loyalty freely given was more powerful than programmed obedience. "The stars have new guardians," Rex declared, "and let all who would threaten the peace know this. The dogs of war are watching, and their humans stand with them." As if to emphasize this point, Max let out a single, clear bark that echoed through the chamber. The other dogs joined in, their voices carrying a simple message to the galaxy: Earth's defenders, human and canine together, were here to stay. The galaxy would never again mistake an old bond for a primitive one.